Hello, my name is Vaikunthan Rajaratnam, and I'm a hand surgeon, a medical educator, and an instructional designer. Welcome to this lecture. The seat of learning is in the brain, and the function of learning occurs in the function of the brain called the mind. I take this model, which is from the Vedic scriptures, of what the four functions of the mind are. They are the sensory motor function, known as manas in Sanskrit. Then there is the memories called chitta. Then there is the self-preservation of ego called ahamkara. And the final most important function of the mind is that of buddhi, which is cognition. The information processing model explains how learning occurs in the mind. It is through the environment, through the sensory input, that the five senses we obtain information, which is then processed in the mind in the memory component. So immediate processing occurs in the working memory or the short-term memory, and the changes that occurs in the maintenance of the memory are very chemical in nature and therefore degrades very quickly. However, through the process of repetition and continuous elaborative rehearsal, this results in a process of encoding, neural encoding, where the chemical structures are then changed to form structural changes in the brain to produce long-term memory. And this is shown through Hebbian learning, where if you keep repeating the same stimulus to two neurons, the communication between the neurons will improve either through increase in the dendritic functions or the synapses, which is a connection between neurons to facilitate learning. So learning, in accordance to Bloom's definition, consists of the three domains, which is the cognitive component and the psychomotor component and the affective component, which is the emotion, the motivation. And you can go back to the four functions of the brain. They are all kind of interrelated. Note that the psychomotor component is the sensory motor response towards a sensation in skills learning, whereas cognitive is more for the knowledge component. But in the affective component, you must realize that emotion is also a motor component of the response of the brain according to the Vedic scriptures. So it is a response to the processing of information by the brain in relation to cognition and ego that produces specific feelings which are chemically mediated, called emotion. So this is my take on how learning occurs. First, there we have a stimuli from our environment, and with this stimulation, the brain processes and identifies what the stimuli means, and this goes back to our long-term memory on recall of what past events were, and from that we have an understanding of the new situation, and we associate this with other factors like our past experience or future anticipation, and therefore create new knowledge. And based on this, we go back to our ego and see what is in it for me, what is the reason why I would want to learn, and if it is a strong enough reason, then we have effective changes and a life change that produces the true effects of learning. In this table, I try to connect the learning theories that we are familiar with, the three main learning theories, with that of instructional design and technology. So the three main theories that we use, behaviorism, cognitivism, and constructivism, and each has its own major components. But generally, in health professional education, we would actually use all three learning theories, and how instructional design needs to address each theory and what are the strategies for the teaching methods and its implication in assessment is important. And this table helps us to design our learning programs using the connection between instructional design and learning theories. In this table, I show the phases of learning and how there is a connection between the various theories of learning with the phases. When nobody becomes an expert immediately, there is a process that is required with practice and experience to achieve a level of competency. So Fitz and Posner was a theory for motor skill acquisition, and Bandura was theory of social learning through observation of others. And Griffiths talks about the various phases of learning from a novice to a master. And Miller's theories, we are very familiar in health professional education, is from knowing a particular procedure to doing it in clinical practice. And this table shows the link. So what's the difference between education and training? Let's go back to the philosophy of learning and understanding of knowledge. So Plato talked about the acquisition of knowledge through the process of self-reflection, thinking about things, about life, about experiences, whereas Socrates talked about it through a process of discourse and argumentation to reason and acquire knowledge. Whereas Aristotle, the basis of almost of health professional research, which is one of empirical research, which is the observation through our senses, and that which we cannot see uh, would not be accepted, and the basis of quantitative research. So simply put, education is for yourself, for your betterment, for your understanding of the universe, and training is for that of others to be trained to be able to perform a particular task or a procedure or a competency. And in health professional education, we look at both education and training. So in the learning process, we have to take both views, both of a quantitative and a qualitative component. People are different. People learn in different ways, but it is important to understand how the brain works in the process of learning and the association with past knowledge and experience. And we must understand the social and cultural context in which learning occurs. People learn in different ways, in different cultures, and so what works in one society may not work in another society. And we must take the learner's own style of learning and cater to that. And that is how instructional design works to ensure that this occurs. So teaching is a process in which we organize the way the information and knowledge flows to the learner, and the process of organizing the environment and the learners so that they can maximize the opportunity to learn. And in keeping with the Aristotle's model of persuasion is what we're trying to do, trying to teach is to persuade the audience, our learners, to change their behavior, to grow and to become a better healthcare professional. So the ethos, the pathos, and the logos is the foundation on which we use to try and provide effective methods of delivery of our teaching methods and strategies. So instructional design is the science of effective teaching and learning, and it is founded on the cognitive neuroscience of how learning occurs. And a lot of things have been shown recently, and so it is all the methods and processes and structures that we employ to facilitate learning of your subject matter to all learners. And this course will take you through that process.